So, my fight them on the wall of them.
All right, welcome in, welcome back. We're back here. We got a few things we want to discuss here since the season's over. I'm looking around trying to figure out some topics to talk about. One would be we're going to talk about some of these bubble teams that are going to make it in to the playoffs or how we think they're going to play this year. Let's talk about 2025 coming into this year. I wanted to kind of go over bubble teams that didn't make the playoffs, or teams that we think are going to make the playoffs. To me, two teams that came into my mind that I wanted to talk to you guys about. One, and at the beginning of last year, you'd have thought these are shoo-ins to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. These are teams that are going to make the playoffs easy. The two teams I'm going to talk about are Alabama and Michigan. Now, Alabama's head coach, Duber, is he on the hot seat if he doesn't perform and they get into the playoffs? They went 9-3. An Alabama team, 9-3, that's pretty disgusting for an Alabama team.
First one since
it's been a while since Alabama has not been in any of these
9-4 if you count bowl games, so they weren't even a 10-game winner.
That's true. Yeah. They actually lost to Michigan. Now, Michigan ended the season hot, now that you're talking about that. They beat their rival, Ohio State, almost rained on their parade. Mm-hmm. And then they went in and they played Alabama and beat Alabama. So they ended on a high note. My question is, the returning players that they have coming back, their recruiting class. I mean, they flipped the number one recruit from LSU. Yeah. Bryce Underwood now is coming into Michigan. I mean, is this kid going to be the superstar that they hope? I mean, they paid him big money, $13 million to come in and play.
They have Ohio State's blueprint.
I mean, how do you feel? Let's just dive in with Michigan first off, and let's talk about Michigan recruiting class.
Yeah.
How do you see the recruiting class coming in?
I mean, I think Bryce Underwood alone is such a key addition to this team. And, I mean, it might also be what leads to the demise of Brian Kelly's tenure at LSU. But I think that Bryce Underwood has the potential to be we've watched Michigan be a really good team for a few years now, especially under Jim Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. And I think we can all agree they never really had a quarterback that was off the charts outstanding. I think Bryce Underwood could be that guy, and you add him to a team that's usually pretty defensively sound, and they added some other key pieces, we don't even know if Underwood's a starter. They also added a great transfer quarterback, Mikey Keene from Fresno State.
He's not competing with no Fresno State.
Keene had a really good year, so it's going to be interesting to see. Do they start with Keene and not let the freshman roll? And if things are rocky off the
$14 million a year, you're starting.
They're just saying that to keep appearances.
Yeah, but I mean, it's nice to know that they're deep at quarterback too. If you're going into the season, if Underwood's not panning out to be the freshman superstar you thought, you could even go the opposite direction and go with Keene. Though they lost a few big pieces. I mean, Will Johnson's obviously going to be a huge loss. Side. Mason Graham. Yeah. But they're usually pretty good at replenishing that defense.
And they proved because those guys didn't play in the bowl game, and they shut Alabama out.
Yeah.
I think they're only losing like four starters. I think I saw like four to five, but those four starters are going to be top third round picks. So they're losing their best of the best on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think they're returning a lot of their defensive line. So I think that's what Michigan really, is known for now, is their defensive line. So as long as they get that back, I mean, the biggest question really is offense for them. So, I mean, we've seen, them have a good offense under Harbaugh. I mean, but can we see, even when Sherrod Moore took over for Harbaugh, they were running the ball 50 times. So it's really now they have their quarterback. Can they develop him?
Well, the biggest factor, too, is they also fired their offense coordinator, went out and got a new one. Yeah, so that could also change the landscape for that offense that had a pretty rough year. Because even when you look at some of their wins, I mean, the Ohio State game, the defense won that game. They never let Will Howard get comfortable. 13-10.
Yeah.
And then Zavada won the game. Zavada versus Ohio State's kicker. Yeah. We all know how that went. But and then you look at the Alabama game. 1913 is not a shootout by any means. Mm-hmm. So even in their key wins, their offense wasn't what did it. It was that defense. So definitely going out and getting a new offense coordinator was a huge step for them because whoever they had last year. was not doing it for them. And Bryce Underwood, I mean, I think that's a huge addition.
Plus,
I've watched some of his stuff, and he looks like he could be.
Yeah, he's
I mean, there's a reason he was ranked number 1.
size,
Yeah.
speed. He looks pretty good. Plus, they got another transfer guy, Justice Haynes, coming in
Yeah.
from Georgia.
Yeah.
He's going to probably run right into that starting role as a running back because
Yeah.
Donovan Edwards is moving on to the NFL.
After a very underwhelming season.
Yeah.
He was the cover of college football and everything.
He did.
He just benefited out of running behind Blake Corum as well.
Yeah.
I still think he's going to be a good back. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that Michigan offense can get any worse.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
I think they were literally ranked 129 out of 133, and it blows my mind because you have teams like Navy, Georgia Tech, Army ahead of them in passing when those are triple option offenses.
Yeah.
So if that's just I don't understand it. You have. It just blows my mind. So I don't think they can get any worse. So if they can get their quarterback situated somewhat to even throw for 200 yards a game, that's all you really need if this defense can hold their own.
Yeah, I mean that was the point I was going to say. I mean their offense can't get any worse.
No.
129 out of 134.
I mean, I guess it could be 130, but if you're the 5th worst offense in football and you still go 8-5 and beat your rival,
Right.
you probably chalked that season up as a win for sure.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I say-
there's definitely like it feels like only room to go up from there, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I looked at their schedule too, and it's not that tough. It really isn't that tough. They play like
It's favorable, yeah.
Yeah, Nebraska is one of their toughest. Ohio State. Besides that, they're not playing the Oregons or.
Yeah, that was my schedule. That was the thing for me. Another point was the schedule. It's favors them because they're not playing Oregon or Penn State. They got Ohio State at home. I mean, so the season's favoring them as having a good year because they dumped 2 of the good teams in. They got Ohio State at home. The rest of the teams they should probably be favored in those games. They should win. So my next question is, are they going to make the playoffs?
I think they should. I'm going to go with yes, just because that we could see a 2-loss team, especially if that offense is okay, and they have 2 losses to say they lose to Ohio State and maybe an early season 1 loss and maybe an Ohio State loss, but then they're blowing out all the other teams. They could still make it. They can still make the Big Ten championship. You don't know what goes on there, and if it's a close game in the Big Ten championship, they can still squeak in. I do think they make it. I don't think the Big Ten's going to be too tough with Oregon losing a lot. Even though they're getting a lot of recruits like they always do buying their team. But I think it's still going to be Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. So it's going to be those 3 teams battling out, and whoever's in the Big Ten championship makes the playoffs. I think winner and loser make the playoffs for that.
For me right now, this early, I'm going to say no. Just because we haven't seen Bryce Underwood play college football. And based off of last season, there's still a lot of question marks with this team. Is Moore the guy? He definitely showed that he has the potential to be down the stretch of the season. Is the new offense coordinator going to be any better? I just think there's a lot of question marks. I'm going to say right now, for me, they're a bubble team. Because, yes, they have a fairly favorable schedule, but any given year at Oklahoma can be a tough game.
Yeah.
Any given year at USC can be a tough game. They still have Nebraska on the road. Wisconsin at home any given year can be a tough game. And then they obviously play Ohio State to cap their season. So I'm not saying they're going to lose those 5 games, go 7-5 again, but they have 5 games that you can't look past.
Right.
And that's still a tough enough schedule. When you have these question marks, it's hard for me to put them in the playoffs right now. So for me, I'm going to say bubble team. With once I start seeing some Bryce Underwood play, maybe after that Oklahoma game, this is a question I revisit. If they come in and to Norman, Oklahoma, and absolutely dismantle the Sooners, then you start having that conversation. Okay, Bryce Underwood's the guy. Michigan can go 10-2 or better, and you start to get an idea of what this team is going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. We don't know what we're going to get at the QB position, and that's the key to Michigan's success. Whoever they're going to put back in there. I agree. I think they're a bubble team needing help to get in, especially the way the Big Ten was last year. You had 4 really good teams, and it wasn't Michigan was one of them.
Yep.
So, they're on the outside looking in, but sure, they could get in. There's no doubt. So that's where I rank Michigan is they're like the 13th or 14th team right there. They're on that bubble trying to get in. Now, the other team we're talking about is Alabama. You know, the questions are this coach, right? Is
Coach
it
and
him?
QB.
Because they lost so many guys, they jumped ship and went in the transfer portal. It seems like he's righting the ship a little bit. Their recruiting class was ranked 3. He's recruiting very well. I think that Alabama is probably going to be a little different this year. The next question to me is the quarterback. Who's going to be their quarterback? So those are 2 big questions on this Alabama team. So how do you see the recruiting class there?
I'll say obviously they had a good recruiting class. I mean, they say it's going to be a quarterback battle. Who was it? Ty Simpson.
Ty
was their
Simpson,
backup. Well,
Washington transfer Austin Mack, and the 5-star Keelan
Let's say
Russell.
Keelan
Yes.
Russell. I say it's the same thing with Michigan.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be starting. I don't think you're going to have do all that work to get that quarterback, especially when you are the head coach at Alabama on the hot seat. You have to make moves. You can't take a guy that sat behind. I mean, Milroe is a good college quarterback, but I mean, he really wasn't. There's games where he should have been benched, and
He should have.
I don't think he made the right decisions keeping Milroe in those games. He was throwing 3 interceptions and fumbling it 3 times. When you have apparently Simpson in the back who's pretty good, but now you're getting they have Keelan Russell is the highest rated QB to go to Alabama since Bryce Young, and we saw how Bryce Young turned out at Alabama. So I think that if they don't ride with him, he's going to be the starting quarterback later in the season, regardless.
I think this is an interesting something that's interesting about this season in general. There's a lot of quarterback what's the word I'm looking for? Battles going on this year. I mean, Notre Dame's got a battle. Ohio State's got a battle. Alabama. It just seems like every big team's got a battle going on right now.
Yeah.
There's a few that got it figured out. I mean, Arch Manning's obviously going to be the guy at Texas next year. For Bama, this one's really interesting because I like what I've seen from Ty Simpson in limited time. I like the few things I've seen from Austin Mack, but I agree, Keelan Russell, you're bringing in a 5-star guy. So they're another team that I think is going to reap the benefits of depth for sure at the quarterback position. If things are starting rocky, you have other routes to go. And yes, they're losing Milroe and they're losing a few key guys on the defense, but they're also returning 2 great offensive linemen. They have to fill a few holes, but they will with that great recruiting class. And then on defense, they're returning one of their best players on each level, with Overton on the defensive line, Jefferson at linebacker, and Brown in the secondary. And then I think the 2 biggest returns are Ryan Williams and Bernard at the receiving core. So if you get that quarterback position figured out, there's no doubt that they know who they're throwing to.
Yeah.
And they
I mean,
got
Ryan Williams
got
was
weapons.
everybody's talking about Jeremiah Smith. Ryan Williams was 17 years old and was doing great things too. Those 2 guys are going to be fun receivers to watch for the next couple of seasons.
For sure.
They got Isaiah Horton. He transferred in too.
Yeah.
And he's real nice.
So they've got a receiving room, which is typical for the Crimson Tide. So they figured out that quarterback position, which I think they will. I think they can be right back at it. Now, Kalen DeBoer, he was always a weird replacement for Saban for me. I mean, wherever he went, they did well, but it was just he had one great season in Washington. Here's the keys to the Disney castle of college football. So I thought it was always a weird hire. I think he, it's always going to take a year to at least settle in. So I'm not writing him off yet. But I do think that,
it's a lot of pressure.
he's probably got to get 10 wins or there's going to be a conversation starting.
Well, that was the thing, we even talked, Ryan Day's on a hot seat. That's a hard job to want to commit to because if you lose one game, the boo birds are screaming and they want you gone.
Yeah.
So Alabama's even a harder spot to be than Ohio State as far as, you're taking over for a legend. You're taking over for probably the greatest head coach in college football there's been. And if you run 9-3, they're calling for you. But he's done fairly well. Kids like him. Recruiting is good. Like you said, that getting, the highest quarterback they've had come in since Bryce Young is a good pick. I think Alabama, as far as, what do you think? Are they a bubble team or they're, you got them in these playoffs?
I'm going bubble right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just I think the only thing that I don't like is their schedule, and they have a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah,
they do.
They've got Florida State to start the season on the road.
That should be
Now,
easy win.
Florida State had a rough season last year, but they're another team that Like I said
Yeah.
with Oklahoma, they could right the ship in 1 year.
Right.
Well,
They bring in big good recruiting
They
classes.
don't have what's his name anymore, quarterback.
Yeah, but then another non-conference game they have is Wisconsin at home. So they have 2 tough, which is very unusual for SEC schools. 2 tough non-conference games. We won't talk about UL Monroe and Eastern Illinois, but other than that, they're at Georgia this year. They're at Missouri. They're at South Carolina. They're at Auburn, who always gives them a fight. Now talking about home games, they've got Oklahoma, they've got LSU, they've got Tennessee. That's just a gauntlet of a schedule.
For sure.
I think I think Michigan and Alabama are very similar teams this year.
Yes,
If the quarterback
that's
comes
fine.
out and balls out, they're a playoff team. But right now, I'm putting them on the bubble until I see something.
Both could be 3-loss teams.
Yeah, that's why I come up with these teams, because I think they're kind of a mirror image of each other in the route that they need to get to these playoffs, because question is quarterback.
Yeah.
They got a lot of talent coming in, but does that equate to wins? To me, I think I got Alabama on the outside looking in as well. I think both these teams got some work to do coming into this season.
Yeah.
I think if the conversation is between these 2 teams, 1 spot's left. Michigan is the team I'm putting in right now today.
I agree.
know
That's a good
it's also
It's
it's March,
it's
but
scheduled.
I do
it's
because it's
scheduling,
scheduled.
and Bryce Underwood is the number 1 guy.
Sure.
So if you're gonna feel more confident about someone,
Yes.
it's gonna be Bryce Underwood. And I think just the way they ended the season too, beating Ohio State and beating Alabama in the bowl game, which obviously we didn't get all the starters in that game, but. It's scheduling too. I mean, Alabama's got a gauntlet.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you play in the SEC, and they finally scheduled some non-conference games. So they've got like a 7-8 game test there of their 12 games where it's going in, and if you go in and look past that game at all, you're gonna lose.
I agree with you. I would think if between these two, I'm leaning towards Michigan schedule and better quarterback. You'd think coming in.
Yeah.
So I agree. But both these teams right now have some work.
For sure.
Well, yeah, we might see him in the Pop-Tart Bowl again.
Right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. We'll come to you next week. We'll put some more bubble teams out there. Hopefully, some of you out here that watch this, tell us your top 10 or say we're full of whatever. You know what? These teams are better than this team. They deserve to be in. But I had fun, and that's why I wanted to present. Everybody has their opinion on who the best team is,
Yeah.
and I agree. So,
Yeah, just like how this year's best team is going to be South Carolina.
Norris Sellers, baby.
Norris Sellers, Heisman hopeful.
bye, guys. Catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.